Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. If you like all things true crime, if you like it delivered in a peaceful, tranquil manner, if you like it clear and concise without drama, then I highly recommend you subscribe. And if you like what you hear, please smash the like button. It's a free way you can help. And now, without further ado, let's dig in. Hi guys. I do hope you're having a great day. On Monday, February 26, 2024, 13-year-old Madeline Soto was reported missing. Her body was found days later, 22 miles from her Kissimmee, Florida home in a wooded area in St. Cloud. It wasn't long before her mother's on-again, off-again boyfriend, 38-year-old Stephan Sterns, was arrested and charged with SA. He'd been doing this to Madeline for years. Sterns was later charged with her death as well. On April 18th of 2024, Madeline's mother, Jenn Soto, was interviewed by officials within the Homicide Unit of the State Attorney's Office in Kissimmee. Jenn was accompanied by her lawyer. Soto was subpoenaed for the interrogation, and she was told that as long as she told the truth this time, she would not be charged. The division chief of the Homicide Unit told Jenn that even if her statements during this interview did not match what she told investigators earlier, she would not be charged, provided she told the truth. Basically, what Jenn said during this mid-April interview could not be used against her, again, as long as it was finally the truth. Two detectives with the Kissimmee Homicide Unit were also present. Jenn shared that she'd been in training for her new job at a Disney hotel. In the weeks prior to the weekend, Maddie disappeared. The week prior, Maddie had stayed at her grandmother Yolanda's house. On Sunday, February 25th, the day of Maddie's birthday, Jenn worked until 10 p.m. She said that she'd selected the date for Maddie's party earlier, and her family had asked her not to change the date when she found out she had to work. Maddie had enjoyed her favorite Puerto Rican dishes, rice with pigeon peas, and cooked pork at the party. Per Jenn, Maddie came home with a wad of cash from the party. She'd also received some trinkets. According to Jenn, Maddie was very happy with her gifts. Stephan Sterns did not attend the party because he wasn't invited. Jenn said that Yolanda never liked Stephan. Jenn confirmed that her sister drove Maddie home from the party, and Maddie arrived there between 8:30 and 8:45 p.m. Jenn was not sure at what time Stephan arrived. When Jenn got home Sunday night, it was around 10:30 p.m., and Maddie and Stephan were downstairs in Jenn's bedroom. Jenn's father owns the townhome, and he charges Jenn $400 a month for the downstairs master suite, which has an ensuite bathroom and a king-size bed. Maddie did not have her own bedroom, according to Jenn, because her father, Jenn's father, would have charged Jenn for that extra room. Instead, Maddie had a makeshift bedroom in the living room with screens for walls. However, Maddie was afraid to sleep there. She said it was too dark. She saw spiders out there. Thus, Maddie had always slept in Jenn's bed since they'd moved into the townhome 2 years earlier. Now, because Jenn had two female roommates, she'd labeled the bedrooms with numbers, and Jenn's bedroom was pretty much the hangout spot for Jenn, Maddie, and Stephan. It sort of sounds like this communal living arrangement meant that most of the people living there spent most of their time in their bedrooms. The living room, after all, was sectioned off with Maddie's area. When Jenn arrived home on Sunday night, she found Maddie and Stephan hanging out in her bedroom. Maddie had already taken her night shower. Apparently, Maddie loved her showers, and she often spent an hour or more in there. Her habit was also to brush her teeth in the shower. Now, while Jenn could not be sure, she thought that Maddie was wearing her pajamas. And normally, Maddie slept in shorts and baggy t-shirts. If I were Maddie, I would have bought myself a wetsuit. You know, those things that go all the way from your ankles to your chest and down your arms. And I would have sealed it shut with some sort of lock. Jenn ate a pub sub sandwich as Maddie told her about her birthday party and all her gifts. The detectives wanted to know if Maddie was wearing her green hooded sweatshirt and blue jeans that Sunday night. You may recall that that is what Maddie was wearing when she was found deceased in that wooded area. Jenn said no. For about 30 minutes, Jenn and Maddie and Stephan chatted, and they counted Madeline's birthday money. Then, at 11 p.m., Jenn told Maddie and Stephan to go upstairs so that she could get a good night's rest. Jenn said she believed that Maddie had already taken her nighttime medication, which was a sleep medication called hydroxine. I think that's how it's called, hydroxyzine. It is used to make people drowsy. Maddie also normally took Miralax because she had bowel issues. It's unclear if she took that Sunday night. Now, normally Madeline picks out her school outfits in the morning, but because Jenn had asked Stephan to come from his parents' house in North Point, which is 2.5 hours away, to Kissimmee to help her with Maddie that week because of her new job, Jenn had asked Maddie the night before to get her outfit picked out and get her water bottle ready for school, fill it up with water, stick it in her backpack, so that things would run smoothly Monday morning when Stephan was to drive Maddie to school. Now, this may have been the one and only time Stephan ever did this. Stephan was also supposed to take Maddie to McDonald's for breakfast. So off Maddie and Stephan went upstairs to room number 4 to spend the night. Normally, Maddie would take her, quote, stuffies and blankies, according to Jenn, meaning her stuffed animals and her favorite blankets. But Jenn couldn't recall if Madeline did that on Sunday night. Jenn never saw or spoke to Maddie again after she sent her upstairs. Jenn recalled that Stephan came down at some point to use the restroom, but that was the extent of any further interaction with him Sunday night. Jenn told the detectives that she normally sleeps through the night, and said she didn't hear any noises or see anything that night. Oddly, Stephan apparently sent Jenn a text at some point Sunday night, and I think it was before Jenn was home, saying that Maddie, quote, got her stuff and was building her nest, end quote. Jenn was not exactly sure what Stephan meant by this. The detectives then asked Jenn about her parental control over Madeline's phone. Jenn said if Madeline wanted any new apps, she had to ask Jenn's permission. The detectives inquired as to whether Madeline had an app called Game Pigeon, and Jenn didn't recognize this. I looked this up, and it says it is an app for ages 12 and up. It has a rating of 3.9, and it's listed under sports, and it is described as a collection of multiplayer games via iMessage. Basically, it's a mobile gaming platform, and thus it allows you to play games on the go. Kids apparently like to pass time playing this game, and I'm thinking it sounds like maybe Stephan got Maddie this app unbeknownst to Jenn. Jenn said she woke up Monday morning to the sound of Stephan coming in to put the leash on her dog, Sailor. However, he was trying to put the leash on while the dog was on the bed, which apparently is a no-no because the dog will pee on the bed if you try to do this. So Jenn said she bolted up out of bed upon hearing this, anxious that the dog was going to do that. So she helped Stephan put the leash on the dog, and then he told her to go back to bed, which she did. Jenn said she then heard somebody in the kitchen that morning closing cabinets, but she doesn't know who it was. She said she woke up at 9 a.m. to her alarm. She got ready. She leaves the townhome between 9:30 and 9:40 p.m. to go to a lab appointment to give blood. Jenn admitted in this April interview that she did not see Madeline on Monday morning, which of course contradicts what she said in earlier interviews. She said she didn't hear from Stephan until 10:20 a.m. He tells her that he left his phone at home. He also tells her that the morning went great. Madeline slept in the car on her way to school. So Stephan is home at this time and he's calling Jenn. Jenn is still out at the doctor's. So Jenn gets her blood drawn at 10:15, and then she arrives home between 11:15 and 11:30 a.m. She said she went straight home from the doctor's because, of course, the detectives want to know where was she that morning. So she said she also had a second appointment that day for Botox. It was some sort of $350 Botox, and I believe it was an injection for migraines. She said she canceled it because she didn't want to spend the money. When she was asked if she knew what Stephan was wearing, she said she thought he had a red shirt on with graphics on it. And when she came home, she found him sitting in her bedroom at her desk on a computer chair. According to Jenn, he was acting normal. He shared the errands that he'd run. He said he went to the vape shop. He waited for it to open, which it did not do. He said that he then needed to run more errands that day down Highway 182. Jenn then asked Stephan if he would like to go with her to pick Madeline up, and she tells him that she's going to be leaving the townhome at about 2:30 p.m. to do this. He says yes. Now, it was during this chat that he mentioned that he needed to update his phone, but he tells Jenn that he did a factory reset by mistake. Now, when I heard this, it struck me that Stephan likely had already done this factory reset, and perhaps he was pretending that he just did it. He probably knew that this information was going to come to light when Jenn later found out that Madeline never made it to school and called the cops. I got the feeling Jenn really had no idea what Stephan did to Maddie, and she had no clue at this point that Madeline was dead and had not gone to school. To me, Jenn sounded authentic during this interrogation, and she also sounded like she genuinely cared about Madeline and loved her. Of course, this could just be Jenn trying to pretend to be a good mother. We've heard a lot of negative things, but that was just my impression of her. Now, Jenn tells the detectives that she didn't hear from Stephan while he was doing his second round of errands. Jenn calls him at 2:15, but he doesn't answer. Then at 2:40 p.m., Stephan calls and he says that he blew a tire and he hurt his thumb while he was changing the tire. He said he changed the tire in the plaza, which we know is a lie. And he really is a whiner. Whenever he has a chance to complain, he seems to do it. But guys, I'm really wondering if he hurt his thumb changing the tire, or if he hurt his thumb doing something else, possibly to Madeline, and was this a way to excuse that injury later on, if people noticed it. By the way, Jenn saw Madeline's phone in her living room bedroom, so she took it with her when she left to go pick Madeline up. But as we know, when she was in line, Madeline didn't come out of the school. Jenn was first in line, so there were a lot of cars behind her, and she said she decided to call Maddie. She forgot that Maddie's phone was in the car. She didn't remember until she heard the phone vibrating in the car. So that's interesting. Madeline's phone was on vibrate. I'm thinking that it was Stephan who made the decision to leave Maddie's phone at home that morning. Of course, he didn't want her tracked by her phone. And I'm also wondering if he put it on vibrate so that he could leave it in the townhome. Jenn was sleeping there, and if somebody happened to call Maddie looking for her, the phone would not ring, it would vibrate, and Jenn would not wake up. Because, of course, Stephan was out driving with a deceased Madeline in the car, and I'm pretty sure he didn't want to be getting any phone calls from Jenn at that point. It was already stressful enough, right? I mean, it had to have been. Now, at this point during the interrogation, the detectives asked Jenn if Madeline ever complained about Stephan taking her Christmas money. Jenn says yes. Apparently, Jenn put all of Madeline's Christmas money in one envelope, and then she put it somewhere for safekeeping. But then Jenn and Madeline couldn't find it, and they thought maybe Stephan had taken it. The detectives asked Jenn if Madeline ever accused Stephan of taking the money, and Jenn couldn't recall, but she said she did eventually find the cash. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Now, Jenn's mother and her sister helped her with Madeline on a regular basis. The detectives then asked Jenn, why did Stephan come to Kissimmee this time? Jennifer explains that she had a lot of night shifts that week, and she wanted Madeline home so that she could spend any time she had available with her daughter. Madeline would normally go to her grandmother's house, and even over there, Madeline slept with the grandmother, even though there was a bedroom over there for her. You know, I'm thinking it's no wonder that Madeline never wanted to sleep alone. She was probably terrified of sleeping alone after what had happened to her with Stephan Sterns. And I'm also now thinking that this sleeping arrangement where Maddie was always sleeping in Jenn's bed, maybe it's not as weird as we all thought because of the strange situation in that home with all these roommates, with Maddie having this makeshift bedroom in the living room where she didn't like to sleep. It makes sense that maybe she was afraid out there, and that's why she was always in her mother's bed. And so when Stephan came over to stay, and he stayed in the bed with Jenn, that's why Maddie was in there too. Of course, this was not a good decision. Somebody should have had Madeline upstairs alone, perhaps in bedroom 4, since it sounds like it was unoccupied. And the detectives then asked Jenn if Madeline ever had any slumber parties with her friends at her house, and Jenn said never. She also told the detectives that she never let Madeline go to other kids' houses for slumber parties, and the reason she gave for this is that she was fearful that something could happen to Maddie at these people's houses, and that possibly Maddie could get SA'd. I find this very odd, and I do wonder if Jenn is making this fear up because maybe she was more fearful that if Madeline went to a friend's house, she might confide in the friend's mother about what was going on at home with Stephan Sterns. This is just me speculating, but there's something about this slumber party stuff and Jenn's reasons for not allowing Madeline to have slumber parties or go to slumber parties that just doesn't ring true to me. And of course, this is something that the detectives probably can't prove Jenn is speaking truth to because it's obviously something Jenn has deep in her head. It's not like, what time did you pick Madeline up? And if Jenn says the wrong time, you know, that's something they can check on. But they probably will never be able to know if it's true that Jenn just was fearful that Maddie might get SA'd. Because it's just so ironic that the SA was actually going down in her own home with Jenn's boyfriend, or sometimes boyfriend. Or maybe Jenn was afraid of having other little girls in the house when Stephan was over for fear he might pull some stuff when they were there. We know that Jenn told detectives that she didn't think the SA stuff by Stephan was necessarily evil, but she did think it was evil that he did Maddie in. According to Jenn, Maddie did her own laundry, and Jenn was teaching her to cook. The detectives then asked about Maddie's normal night routine. Jenn began to cry at this point. This question really upset her. She said that normally she would give Madeline her medication. Madeline would get in the shower. Then she would get dressed in her PJs. She would brush her hair. They would watch a little TV, and Madeline would have a snack before bed. And on most mornings, Jenn said, Madeline would wake up at 7:30 a.m. They'd hit the snooze button until 8 a.m. Then Maddie would get up, get dressed. After that, Maddie would lay back in bed as Jenn made her breakfast. After that, Madeline would brush her teeth, do her makeup, and take her ADHD meds. They would leave the house normally between 8:45 and 9 a.m. for school, and the first bell at Maddie's middle school is at 9:20 a.m. Now, on Monday, February 26, Stephan left at 7:30 a.m., and he left, of course, with a deceased Maddie. And 7:30 a.m. was very early for him to be leaving to drive her to school. Jenn didn't learn about this until later when Stephan came back and told her. And she was like, why did you leave so early? And he's like, I don't know, we just got an early start. Jenn said sometimes Madeline would be sluggish in the morning, and this would be from her nighttime hydroxine. And apparently one time Stephan gave Madeline a double dose by mistake. There was also another time, I think, when Madeline would not wake up and Jenn was frantic, so she called poison control for help. Madeline later told Jenn that the pills that Stephan had given her looked larger than the normal ones, and the cops thought that maybe Stephan gave Madeline some of Jenn's medical marijuana pills, which are THC pills. You'd think after such a scare that Jenn would have cast Stephan Sterns out of her home once and for all. I mean, that's a mistake you just cannot be making. And of course, I don't think it was a mistake. I think he did that deliberately, because we know that of the, 600 photos and videos on his phone, in most of them, Maddie appeared to be asleep. The detectives asked Jenn why Stephan remained living at her home after they broke up in December, and she said that she wanted to support him. He had a job at Disney, he was doing well at it, his mental health seemed to be good, so that's why she allowed him to move up into bedroom number 4, which he paid $600 rent for. But of course, it wasn't him paying the rent, it was his father, Chris, paying that. Jenn also tells the detectives that she trusted Stephan with her child, and she believed that he loved her in the same way that Jenn loved Madeline. Now, we also know that Jenn was keeping a calendar of Madeline's periods, and that apparently Madeline did not get her period at the beginning of February. But Jenn said that this wasn't like something new, it had happened before. So the way she said it, she didn't sound too worried about it, but she did notice that Madeline didn't use any of the supplies that she'd purchased for the month. Now, it doesn't say in here, at least that I'm aware of so far. I'm still listening to this interview, so this is actually part 1 of what I'm going to share with you. It doesn't say if Madeline was pregnant, but it seems like the detectives are sort of asking questions about that. So I am wondering if it's possible that that was the case, and could that explain the motive for Maddie's death? Certainly that would be a more compelling reason for Stephan Sterns to get rid of Madeline than just her having crushes on young boys at school. I also had the impression that when the detectives asked Jenn about the nesting comment or text that Stephan had sent her, I felt like they were sort of leaning toward, was this Madeline possibly pregnant, creating a nesting area? But that could just be me. They didn't come out right and say that. Okay, so this is part 1 of this interview. I'll be listening to the rest of it, analyzing it, and bringing it either to you tomorrow or the following day. I want to ask you now, if you've been enjoying my videos for however many years I've been doing this, if you would please consider a membership, either on YouTube or on Patreon. My numbers are down in terms of viewership on some videos, So I am making not a lot of money. And by not a lot, I mean not a lot. So if you can help in any way, I would really appreciate it. If you enjoy my work, if you want to support my journey here, if you believe in me, if you could help, that would be so great. If you can't, hey, I still love you. I appreciate you. Just hit that like button, leave me a comment. All of that stuff helps. And I'll see you next time on Bed Crime Stories.